underscores that. Bitcoin is really important, and I'm glad to be able to talk to people about it. I'm glad to have an audience. So thank you for inviting me. It's one of the most important things that's happened to humanity, up there with the importance of the discovery of fire and farming and the printing press. It's that important, I believe. It's not appreciated yet, but it will happen, and the world will see how important it is that Bitcoin's been discovered. So this is just a screenshot of my website and where you can find some more information. At the top, under general articles, if you scroll down to Bitcoin syllabus and click that, there'll be lots of links to other people's writing, but the rest of the website is the things that I've written.
Yeah, they are right there. Thank you.
I've divided this talk up into 3 parts. The first part, I'll talk about what is money and the purpose of money, and I'll talk a bit about barter and how money solves that problem, and go into the types of money. And in the second part, I'll talk about what are the important properties, the good properties of money, and why Bitcoin has nearly all of those properties, and compare it to gold. And also, I'll briefly mention altcoins, how and why they're really a failure. They're not really an alternative. And then in the third part, I'll talk about what is Bitcoin, which is a completely, that could be a whole seminar in itself, but I'm just going to touch on it briefly, just in case there's some things people haven't heard about before. So for the first part, what is money? And most people, I don't think, know what money is. I ask a lot of people and they don't give me good answers. It's not their fault. It's because we're not taught what money is. Even university graduates, people studying finance or accounting or banking, they actually don't know what money is. My accountant didn't really know what money is. They know how to count money, but they don't know what it is. And so I'll go into a bit of that today, and then I'll discuss its purposes and types. I did a Google search, and if you search what is money in Google, this is the answer you get. It's actually a really bad explanation. It says it's a medium of exchange, that's fine, in the form of coins and banknotes, as though that's the only kind of money. That's actually terrible. The coins and banknotes are money that's for us, not free market money. It's one type of money that's taken over the world, but it's not a good definition of money. Another one I found just quickly was from Investopedia, which says money is an economic unit that functions as a generally recognized medium of exchange. I think those are important facts for the transactional purposes in the economy. Which that's a better definition, but it leaves out the fact that money stores value and that it's a unit of account. I didn't come up with my own definition. I don't think it's necessary to have a nice sentence that encapsulates everything. But I explain to people what money is like this. I agree with economic unit. It can be something that's written down, or it can be an object. And it used to always be a commodity. I'll go into the history of that a bit later, but it doesn't have to be a commodity. And the functions are that it stores value, so you can do work and you can exchange it for someone else's work later on. And that is medium of exchange property. You can give it to someone, they can give it to someone else. And the unit of account means that goods and services are measured against the unit of account. Another thing that's not appreciated very much is that money is actually a language. If you think about the English language, it's symbols and sounds and rules. Which that's the language, and then it's useful when people use it. The more people that use those rules, the better the language becomes. and Charlie. And I'm going to demonstrate barter and how money solves the problem of barter. Let's just say Alice sells apples, Bob sells bread, Charlie sells carrots. Then these people exchange things with each other. Let's say Alice doesn't want carrots, Alice wants bread. That's that blue arrow on the left. And Bob sells bread but wants carrots, and Charlie sells carrots but wants apples. So the direct exchange is not possible in this situation. This is called the coincidence of wants economic problem that money solves. Alice wants the bread, but Bob doesn't want apples. So these people can't exchange goods and services with each other. And the same between Bob and Charlie, they can't exchange. But Alice does something clever. Alice works out that Bob wants carrots. And so Alice sells apples to Charlie and gets carrots, even though Alice doesn't want carrots. And then exchanges the carrots with Bob and gets the bread that she wants. And Bob gets the carrots. So this kind of exchange can happen. It's indirect. And the carrots are being used sort of as a medium of exchange and on the way to becoming money. So it's not very good. This doesn't increase prosperity and economic activity in the society. So it's very difficult to be very risky. Because what if Alice is to take carrots from Charlie and then Bob changes his mind and doesn't want carrots anymore? Then Alice is stuck with the carrots. So now let's bring Sam into the society, and we'll say Sam sells salt. And everybody wants salt, so Sam is able to sell salt and get apples, bread, and carrots. And then everybody in the society has salt, and everybody wants salt. So salt is now saleable. It's easy to sell salt. And exchange happens a lot easier in this society because Alice can get bread and give Bob salt, or the other way around. And even though Bob's got salt, he wants salt. So he'll accept salt from Alice and get apples. And he can use that extra salt that he's got to exchange carrots with Charlie. And here salt is acting as a form of money. And this solves the problem of barter. But salt's got problems, and a different money can come in and replace salt. So it's not that safe to be holding salt. And salt was used as money a long time ago. I don't know when. But as better money comes, it replaces the poorer money. And later when you go through the properties of money, you'll see what the properties are and why a better money can displace the poorer money. But I showed you a scenario where everyone was already specializing. Alice was growing apples only. But really, in society with no money and with barter, then it makes sense for everyone to do things for themselves. Alice will grow apples, bread, and carrots and collect salt because it's not easy to exchange these things with other people. And so everyone's spending a lot of time doing things that they're not very good at, so just to make sure they can get the basics they need. When money evolves in society, then, for example, Alice would stop making bread and carrots and collecting salt and just focus on apples, and will be able to produce much more for this society and exchange salt with the others to get the things she needs. And that increases prosperity for everyone. And I'm just taking a detour. Right now, we've got, you may have heard of some altcoins, and some people are envisioning a world where there's lots of different coins and you'll be holding hundreds of different coins for different purposes. But that is not a stable situation. That actually reverted to barter. The economy won't work with all different kinds of money because, again, Alice will be stuck with the same problem trying to get bread from Bob when Bob doesn't want Dogecoin, Doge might want XRP. It's the same problem as before. This is not a society with money. What's really going on, though, is that Bitcoin is being valued as money primarily as a digital money, and lots of people will accept Bitcoin. And what will happen over time is that the other forms of money will evaporate as Bitcoin becomes more and more useful, and people will hold Bitcoin. And then we'll be in this situation where everybody has Bitcoin, everybody wants Bitcoin. Bitcoin will be the money, and people can exchange their goods and services easily. So just to recap so far on part one, the evolution of money in society allows specialization of trade, solves the problem of barter, and massively increases prosperity for whoever uses the money. And it allows us to save for the future and think long term and embark upon projects which take many years to fulfill. If you don't have money that holds its value, then you can't invest in the future like that. And also, money allows the economy to be bigger than it otherwise would be, because goods and services can be traded over long distance. And the other thing I want to talk about in part one is the types of money. What I've described so far is free market money, where a good, whatever it may be, I use salt as an example, evolves from a stage of barter without anyone forcing you to do that. It just happens naturally. And the best form of money will be the one that evolves. Right now it has been gold for many years. That's going to change. And then the different type of money is fiat money, which is money that is forced by governments. And that's got many problems, which I'm going to go through. But it's important to make this distinction between free market money and fiat money. Free market money eventually will evolve to one type of money as people want the best form, because that's the safest. You don't want to be holding money that no one else is using. You're always going to try and get more money that everyone else is using. So everything evolves towards one money. And when there's multiple monies, then barter towards money is incomplete. The end stage is one money in a free market. But when the free market is manipulated and controlled by force by governments, then multiple monies can exist because they're forcing us. And we see this today. Every country, or nearly every country, has got their own money. And international trade is really a system of barter. But within that country, yes, there's money, but there's problems which I'll go into. So I mentioned international barter. Like the USA and Australia, we don't exchange the same money. An Australian, to buy something from USA, will have to get US dollars and then spend it there. And then an American who has US dollars may want something from Germany and has to get euros and exchange his dollars for euros and then buy the goods. So this is not an efficient system, and it's a type of barter. The other problem with the other problem with fiat money is that it can be counterfeited or printed out of thin air by those who are in charge of the money, which is the governments and central banks. And that is a completely unfair rigged system where they can just, imagine if you can create money, you'd be the richest person in the world. You can just make money and then spend it and buy anything that you want. And everyone else will suffer because you have this ability. So this is what's happening now with governments around the world. They're printing money, and normally we would say, no, thank you, we don't want that, but they're forcing it. It's law to use the money and pay your taxes in the money that they have the ability to create out of nothing. And that leads to governments getting bigger, and it leads them to, it allows them to go to war very cheaply, because they steal from their citizens their value and can do whatever they want and just get bigger and bigger. And the people that are ruling us are getting more and more powerful. Banks are also printing money out of thin air. When someone borrows money from a bank, let's say they borrow $100,000 or whatever to buy a house, the money they get isn't somebody else's money that the bank is holding. The bank just creates it out of thin air and puts it into your account. So new money gets created. And you have to pay that back to the bank. So if you borrow $100,000 and the bank creates $100,000 and gives it to you, you pay the $100,000 back to the bank plus interest. The bank just instantly and easily gets rich for no work at all, no risk at all. If you don't pay the bank back, they get the house that you put up as collateral. So the banks are stealing assets from all the citizens of the world easily and for free in cooperation with governments. This is why everyone is poor, because the governments are stealing. And this is the problem with paper money that they can create out of nothing. If money was fair, they wouldn't be able to do it. And as they create more money, as there's more and more and more money floating in around the world, of course, things that are scarce are going to cost more because there's just more money. So people are competing to buy things. If everyone's got more money, then the prices of things are going to go up. It's just mathematics. And so if you're working hard and saving money and someone else is printing money and making everything become more expensive, then all the work that you did is going to become worthless. You might have worked your whole life and saved 100,000 or I don't know, whatever it is. And then in a few years, governments print trillions of dollars out of nothing, digitally even, and everything becomes more expensive and the things you're saving for is now out of reach. And all the work you did in your life is gone and stolen by the people in charge of the money. So nobody should be in charge of the money. That's what Bitcoin is. I hope that makes sense because I think it's a very, very important thing to understand and why Bitcoin is important because it fights this very problem. So how did we get here where the world is basically taken over by people forcing us to use paper money? It started off with society around the world not communicating with each other and using barter. So in different continents around the world, there was barter at different times. And some form of money naturally evolves in human society. And then different monies appear and replace the previous money. And eventually we came up with gold as the best money because it's the most scarce and difficult to produce. It's easy to recognize. I'll talk about this later. But gold is the best money. So a new money comes along, it has to be way better than gold to replace it. And so far, until Bitcoin, nothing has come along. But gold had a problem. It's easy to trade gold between yourselves in the same community. Fairly easy to recognize. But the problem it has is it's difficult to send it a great distance. It's risky, you can get robbed, and it's heavy. And you have to actually go and transport it. You trust it with someone else, put it on a ship and send it to somebody else. These are very costly things to do. And so international trade isn't easy with gold directly. So what has to happen is you have to trust somebody with the gold, put it in a bank, and then the bank will give you a more than the gold they have and inflate the money supply and cause inflation. It also causes boom-bust cycles. But a real big problem is when the banks have all the gold, government can come along, as they did in 1932, and confiscate everyone's gold very easily because they're all in banks, and the banks participate with government. And in 1932, President Roosevelt made an order that all citizens must hand in their gold to the government in exchange for $35 per ounce, which was more than the current price, and they took everyone's gold. Only banks and governments were to use gold. So money became gold IOUs for everyone except those in charge. And that allowed governments and banks to inflate the money supply, to create more gold IOUs, more than the gold that it's supposed to represent. And so they participated in this, which is a form of stealing. And America did this to a great extent, and France called their bluff and handed in their US dollars in exchange for gold. The governments can do that, but not citizens. And as more and more gold was taken away from the US by France, in 1971, President Nixon announced that they're no longer holding that honor of the dollar and that it's no longer redeemable for gold. So the entire world moved from gold and gold IOUs to paper money from 1971. And from that year, everything turned to signal language censorship. In summary, this is how it went from money being gold to the option of gold or gold IOUs to solve the problem that gold had. and then we went to only gold IOUs, and then we went to only paper. So the world now uses paper, digital paper, that in control of governments and central banks. Oh, that was part one. Part two, I'm going to talk about I can pause here for a moment and answer any questions about that. If anyone, and we can do it at the end as well. About that.
Can you hear me?
Okay. I can hear you.
Okay. So if you were the president at that time, what would you have done differently?
I've done different.
Yeah, what would you have done differently?
Well, at which time? In 1971?
At the time when they changed gold to a paper, that's nice.
1932. I mean, we never needed to confiscate everyone's gold. That was the big problem. If people were using gold as money and gold IOUs, so be it. And banks would inflate the money supply, cause boom-bust cycles, but banks will go out of business. And that's okay. We should have let banks go out of business when they printed too many gold IOUs. But what happened, the governments came in and saved the banks by confiscating everyone's gold and creating gold IOUs. It's the banks that are the enemy. And the politicians, I suppose they were bought by the banks. If I did the right thing, I may have been killed. I don't know. The world has been corrupted.
Yes, that's true.
On. Part two, I want to talk about the properties of money, the important properties of money. It's broken down into two things. One is the technical properties, which explains what the money is, and the other is the social properties, about the community of people using it. And you need to have good properties for both for the money to be good. If we have a perfect token and nobody's using it, then the money is poor. It's not doing what it should be doing. And if we have a poor token but everyone is using it, again the money is poor. This is the state we're in now with fiat money. We have a very bad money and everyone's using it, so we're in trouble. When we look at gold technically was actually quite good, had very good property. That's why it was the winner of the free market. But it had one main weakness, which was it was difficult to transport long distances, which led to it being held in banks, and then it led to confiscation. The social properties of gold were very good. Lots of people use it. Everyone recognized it as money all over the world. And that was built up over thousands of years. And now we have Bitcoin, which its technical properties are vastly superior. I don't want to understate that. It really is vastly superior to gold for its technical properties. And I'll go into that next. And it fixes the problem that gold had. And its social properties are no way near as good as gold because it hasn't had 5,000 years to develop. But for the 12 years, 13 years it's been around, it's done extremely well, and it's going to continue to do very well because it's vastly better than gold in its technical properties. So these are the technical properties that most people will be able to recognize. And I just call them the traditional technical properties. And if we look at each one, divisibility is very important for money to be divisible. And Bitcoin is divisible to 8 decimal places. You don't have to buy one full Bitcoin, you can have fractions. And if Bitcoin becomes so valuable one day that even the 8th decimal place is too large a unit, the code can be changed and we can add more decimal places. That's not a problem. It's more divisible than gold because even though gold is divisible technically down to the gold atom, that's not very practical. So it's very small. It's very difficult to have small quantities of gold and transact with people and weigh milligrams at a time. Portability, this is where gold really fails because it's heavy and it's not digital. You have to carry it to places. Whereas Bitcoin it's digital, has no weight, and it can be sent instantly around the world or at the speed of light. So it's very portable. And you can store your Bitcoin with a password in your head. You don't have to physically keep it in a safe. You can just remember 12 words, and then that's your Bitcoin. You can learn more about that on my website when you learn about Bitcoin's properties. If that's completely new to you, it will take too long to explain that. Durability. Yes. Sorry. Okay. Durability refers to how long it will last. Like there's different kinds of monies, and apples will be a bad form of money because it's going to get rotten. Gold is a good form of money in terms of durability because gold doesn't rust, and it's 1 ounce of gold today is the same in 1,000 years. And Bitcoin is similar. It's not quite as good as gold. We don't know if Bitcoin is going to be around in 1,000 years, but I say it's almost equal to gold because the only thing that's going to stop Bitcoin is if humans are extinct, and so that's good enough for durability in Bitcoin. Recognizability is important, and Bitcoin is easily recognizable if you run your own node. That's technically difficult to do. Not everyone's going to do that, but if you have a good wallet, it can recognize if Bitcoin is being received. It's better than gold because if you receive gold, you're not sure if it's fake or not, and it's quite expensive to be able to properly determine if the gold you have is real, or you have to melt it down to determine it's real. So Bitcoin is much easier for that. And transferability, Bitcoin can transfer to anyone instantly all over the world. And cheap and easy to store. Bitcoin, as I said, you just keep it in your head, whereas Bitcoin, with gold, you'll have to find a secure place to keep it, like a safe, or worst case is a bank, which is one of the problems I mentioned. And the property of hardness or scarcity refers to how easy it is to produce more of. The worst is